What's up, y'all? So today we're going to be talking about organic versus non-organic foods. Is it worth it? Do they even do anything? What's the strategy for both people who are looking to get into fitness and bodybuilding and people that are simply looking to optimize their health? All right, so the first thing we want to talk about is organic even relevant? You know, I did take a freaking geography of food class when I was in college, and I learned a little bit there, but most of this has been through my own research. And you know, we have something like the BPA in the water bottles where they just switch out the next chemical that might even be worse than the one that they replaced. So the same kind of fallacies are possible with organic foods as well, where, okay, we banned everything that was bad, but did we reintroduce something that was worse? And so with all of these questions, we're going to dive down into the research. We're going to see which foods are actually, you know, better and why they're actually better. And I'm going to sell you on my idea of what the best organic foods to eat are and what the ones that are kind of don't matter to me. So let's just break the ice first, and I'll flip to the end here. And I'll just give you right off the bat my conclusion. Most to least important, and then I'll have some caveats. Most important to get organic are your leafy vegetables because it's so hard to get the pesticides off of them, and they hold them much more easily than other plants. Now, I looked up a study that showed you can remove about 40 to 70% of the pesticides, herbicides, insecticides, and other toxic garbage that gets onto these conventionally grown vegetables, especially leafy vegetables. But the thing is, if you're removing 40 to 70%, that's not good enough, you know? And they already have such high levels. So for me, that's a pretty important one, because the tests show that these have high levels of toxins in them, and high levels of these toxins is shown to correlated with the fertility problems and cancer problems for the most part. But anyways, second, meat. Meat is just such an integral part of my diet, and I see all the benefits to the profiles, which we'll get into later. That's why that's so important to me. And really it should be number one, just because I don't really eat my leafy vegetables. I just mostly avoid them. Third, I have dairy because, again, it's really for the same reason as meat. It's changing those nutritional profiles of things like omega-3, omega-6 ratios, the overall fatty acid profile. So that's that. And then fruit is last because there's a lot of fruit that is covered, you know, and so you're really not getting a lot of pesticide and herbicide exposure. Now, I'm not going to touch GMOs here. I am a fan of avoiding GMOs, but that is something to consider. If you want to get a non-organic but GMO-free fruit, that would be my general strategy, and for other vegetables that are not leafy. Okay, so let's flip back to the start here and get deeper into the actual research. So I went to an NIH systematic review of organic versus conventional food consumption, all right? And the overall conclusion is that it was associated, when you have organic, it was associated with reduced infertility, reduced birth defects, reduced allergic sensitization, reduced metabolic syndrome, which is a huge one, and more. But there's no definitive statement on it's 10% better, it's 20% better. I think these are still emerging fields, really, given how short of a period of time we've had good quality organic food available to large segments of the population. So when you have, you know, a study that only runs for 1 year, how much cancer research are you really going to be able to get done? And so what really we're looking at here, in my opinion, is a extended small exposure causing these problems rather than any short exposure. And this is interesting because the actual macro qualities of these foods does not appear to change based on conventional organic. It's going to have the same amount of vitamin C, it's going to have the same amount of calories, or you know, and stuff like that. This is just what the research is. I'm not even saying I agree with this research. I mean, I do think things that are going to be grown in a better environment, truly organic, maybe to higher standards than the official organic standards are going to have higher nutritional profiles as well. Excuse me, when it comes to the base macros. But anyways, and what are the most commonly consumed organic foods? Baby food, eggs, fruit, vegetable, then dairy. Beef wasn't even listed on this. So really, if you want to take something big away from this video, it's people aren't talking enough about organic beef. I mean, a lot of people have mentioned it, but for me, I really think it's a cheat code. I mean, there's so many simple things I really feel like looking at the research and looking at what I feel and going to the gym and seeing people that are taking steroids, doing all these things to their body that aren't healthy. This is a reason to get excited, people. So I already mentioned higher antioxidants, better omega-3 to 6 ratio, better fatty acid profiles, but not necessarily nutritionally different in a technical sense. Lower heavy metals, toxins, fertilizers, pesticides. I mean, that's really what we're getting down to here. And so now I want to touch on, is it clear that, we're actually reducing exposures? Based on what I've seen here, it is clear that we're reducing exposures because we're seeing the health effects. So even if they're replacing, a banned pesticide, herbicide, whatever, and replacing it with something, it seems like that something is better because we go down to the studies and they're measuring the excretion of pesticides and it's much, much lower. Now you could also say, well, they're not screening for the other ones, blah, blah, blah. There are hairs to split here, but I think that is probably accurate. So a couple fertility metrics and a couple other metrics that I just wrote down here. 20% increase in plasma antioxidant capacity. That's cancer right there. That's something good. Few short-term effects in studies, always indication of less pesticide and herbicide exposure though. But in a very short-term study, because those pesticides, the negative effects can't be shown in such a short period of time, but the base macronutrient profiles are basically the same, you don't see anything. So now let's get into specifically meat. So I pulled up a study, nutritional properties of organic versus conventional meat. This is also on PubMed. And this is just one study, but I reviewed another systematic review, and these findings seem pretty consistent to me. And I've also looked at some of this other research in the past, but 17% less cholesterol, 32% less fat. Not that, that's kind of like a past statistic. Less fat's not necessarily bad. 16% less fatty acids, 24% of something, 34% more CoQ10, 72% more taurine. Look up taurine, all right? You need taurine in your diet. And 72% higher in this study, that's crazy. That's actually crazy. And of course, that study didn't include the omega-3, omega-6 ratio, but that's been demonstrated to be much better in the conventional, or in the organic foods versus conventional. So since the majority of my nutrition is coming from the meat, and I view meat as such a superior source of nutrition, that's why it's number one in my list, and that's why I don't think enough people are talking about it, because part of it is that we have this view of beef specifically and other ruminants as multi-gastric animals that are filtering out quite a bit of the garbage. And while I do think that that's probable that they are filtering out a decent amount of garbage, I don't think it's avoiding, because what these animals are being fed, it's not humane, if I'm being honest. They're being fed soy, they're being fed just the worst of the worst grains and blah, blah, blah. Not ancestrally consistent with their diets at all. And the things that I've quoted here are, in my opinion, enough evidence to indicate just how far departed those things are. But even more than that, there are, for example, toxins are stored in the fat tissue. This is something that people know, but it's not something that I've seen a study measuring on, all right? So what other things are in this conventional beef that we don't even know about, Because again, when we were looking at the vegetables earlier, we were saying, oh my gosh, there's, it's so much levels less of pesticides, herbicides, and etc. We don't find herbicides in animals, but they're eating them. So where are those being filtered through in terms of the quality of the food? My suspicion would be that somewhere in that picture, those are having an effect. And so conventional beef really ain't any better than conventional fruits or vegetables. But because it's already such a superior food, it's very important for me to have it. to take the other side, if I was a vegan, which I've been in the past, you know, I would not care much a bit. Or if I was very infrequently eating meat, I probably wouldn't be too concerned with whether it's organic or not. And even today, I don't always have organic meat. If I'm out with family, if I'm doing whatever, I don't think about these things too much. But yeah, so moving on, leafy vegetables, you can remove 50 to maybe 70% through washing. It's not good enough. One study that they showed had 90% less toxin emission through urine, 90% less within a couple days of switching to the organic diet. So I really think that you should be, whatever your main nutrition source is, get that organic, because there are benefits. It seems to me, putting this whole picture together, that every food will benefit organically, because I would say the rules are eliminating some bad things. Whether or not it's eliminating everything bad, the only way to really know that is to go to your local farmer and get something truly local, where you know exactly, you know, the way it's been treated. And even then, you don't know the soil quality, you don't know what's filtered through. So, you know, it's a tough world we live in, but the research shows that organic is having benefits. And for the fertility metrics, like I mentioned earlier, I mean, 26% more likely to have a live birth with the mothers that were eating an organic diet. And again, this isn't even talking about the composition of the diet. It's just saying, you know, whatever the diet is, it's organic. So very interesting things. And for me, there's no price I wouldn't pay to, you know, to have that health. I think investing in your health is number one. It has so many benefits. It's going to increase your productivity. It's going to increase your lifespan. It's going to make you feel better. You know, it's just, health is everything. I wouldn't trade, you know, any of my health for all the riches in the world. So get your organic beef, get your omega-3, omega-6s in line, get your taurine, you know, and really look into some of this stuff, because I'll be honest to you, most of the people I talk to think organic's kind of a scam. And I think in a sense it could be, partially, but I think the research bears out that there's real benefit. And so, you know, make the decision as to what amount of toxins you're willing to take. Cancer and infertility is what awaits if you overindulge in the toxins. So be careful, you know, obviously live your life and don't think too much about these. Like I say, I'm probably 90%, and then 10% I'm doing whatever. And that's in all facets of my life right now. Maybe I'll be at 100% someday. I don't know. Should we be at 100%? It's a question for another video. Peace, y'all.